Hi, and welcome to Ruby's Ask Me Anything office hours. My name is Dan Marek. I'm Director of Plant Based Culinary. We meet up once a week to be able to answer any questions from our students about culinary related and any questions you have about any of the courses at all. We are going to jump right in with some questions today. It looks like it's going to be pretty quick. If you do have any questions, you can just type them into the box on the right-hand side of your screen on our platform. Click the add button, and that will be posted to be moderated to make sure that it is culinary related as well. If you're watching on YouTube, you can also just log into our our platform on Ruby to be able to ask any direct questions as well. But let's get started and dig right in. Our first question is from Cindy. Hi Dan, developing a recipe sounds like it would be super difficult. What was your most challenging recipe to develop? So developing recipes has kind of changed for me over the years. 20 years when I first started getting into whole food, plant based food, there wasn't a whole lot of examples for more modern cuisine. Most of the things that I would find were references to books like written in the 70s with like lots of recipes around whole food and plant based, but there hadn't been a whole lot since then. So I had to do a lot of discovery. And when I worked for Whole Foods Market, was developing a lot of recipes in their Health Starts Here program for their whole food plant based, you know, sections basically. So things that you could find in the case, but also running a restaurant out of that as well. That was great because it gave me the opportunity to start developing recipes like that. And then also when I was doing cooking courses and live demonstrations for different things, I would have to come up with different recipes, basically, on my own to be able to demonstrate to people how you could eat in this way in today's age really easily as well. Um, so recipe developing can be difficult if you don't have patience with it. I think the biggest thing that you can do, and I see your follow up question here, is what are some good tips for developing recipes you can share with us? And this is right on. It's like definitely give yourself patience with it. The first time you make something, if it's a difficult recipe, it might not come out well. The most challenging recipes I probably developed were different breads, where breads are very exact science. So, if you're trying to experiment with a little bit of this and a little bit of that, it's probably going to go wrong the first one or two times you do it. So definitely on the bread section, when I was trying to do whole food plant based, like pizza crust. I remember that injera, the Ethiopian bread, was a hard one, just to be able to get the bubbles and everything into it to be able to make it so it fermented easy for a restaurant setting as well too. But yeah, breads were probably the most difficult to adapt. And then just also having some experimentation on other recipes, coming up with different plant-based cheeses when plant-based cheeses were not something you could buy at a grocery store. They, now there's a huge amount of different products you can buy, but then trying to find something that you could do a slice on a cracker or something like a Parmesan was pretty difficult to be able to do. So we had to kind of think outside the box. My mentor at the time was, Chad Sarno, who's a chef who's really well known for raw food at that time. And we'd have to come up with a lot of different things to be able to experiment with these and kind of try to see what worked with them. But the biggest advice I can give you on this, Cindy, is to have patience with it. Developing a recipe, you're going to try something once. It might not come out exactly the way you want to, but then you can build upon that and improve upon it. So the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. And it'll start to be able to understand, how flavors and different flavor profiles kind of come together. So you're not just kind of walking in the dark. You will use your palate to be able to get you to the other side of that. Hope that helps, Cindy. Cecilia, the course is using cashews quite a bit, but I have cardiovascular disease and Dr. Esselstyn told me no nuts. Can you recommend a replacement for nuts for sauces used in recipes? Thank you. And your follow-up question here is, can tofu or soybeans be used in some recipes in place of cashews? That's exactly where I was going to go with this, Cecilia. So, Dr. Esselstyn is okay with nuts, but if you have cardiovascular disease and a heavier level, he usually tries to stay away from them. So, if depending on what you're doing, tofu can be a great substitute for cashews, especially in sauces. Like silken tofu is actually a wonderful thing to be able to use for sauces or dressings, where you can blend it up. If you're going to blend that up with, say, some herbs and some vinegar and maybe a touch of Dijon, you can make a nice like Caesar dressing or even a ranch dressing I've paid for my kids to be able to get them a healthier style ranch that their friends, if they really like ranch, we can do a tofu version instead too. Um, but for other things like say like the ricotta, like that, you can do a lot of people do a cashew ricotta. I like to do a tofu ricotta instead, where I just basically crumble the tofu and then I'll put a mixture of like lemon juice and nutritional yeast and some salt into it, a little bit of onion and garlic powder as well too, to be able to kind of bring out the flavors of those. And you can blend that if you want to. I usually like to break it up so it's a little more coarse. The texture is a little more full. But yeah, so depending on the recipe, you can absolutely substitute out with tofu. Soybeans can be the same thing if you're using like a food processor, you can grind them up a little bit too. But depending on the recipe you're trying to replace the cashews in, we'll see if that fits or not. Some of the problem areas I might see are like a cashew cheese, so there's one that we do with an agar agar. That would be a little hard to do without the cashew because you want the fat content to be able to do that. So it might take a little bit of experimentation to be able to get what you're looking for, just depending on the recipe. All right. So, Michael, when crafting a menu, how do you decide which dishes to include and how to position them on the menu? What resources would you like to see someone consult to do this? Should I hire a consultant? Uh, I'm not 100% sure your setting for this. If you're talking about a restaurant, um, you know, you might want to hire a consultant if it's the first time you've ever done it. But quite honestly, looking at crafting a menu, even when I was running restaurants and creating the recipes for them and the menus, I would first and foremost look to see what was in season to be able to get the most flavor out of those dishes, right? So I would break up my menus basically, and some of them are micro seasons, right? So uh, depending on what you have available at the moment to be able to get the most flavor out of them. Now, spring, you're going to get a couple different, versions of spring: early spring versus late spring, and then you're also going to get summer versus late summer. And the harvests for those seasons are quite different, and you're going to get different vegetables that you'll be able to harvest in those. So, depending on where you are in the country, there are seasonal guides for what would be fresh and what would be harvested at what times. And that would be my North Star on what I would do to create recipes, because then you can get the biggest flavor, the biggest pack of flavor, um, depending on what season it is. So if it's, like right now, it's end of August, beginning of September, tomatoes would be something I would feature on a recipe or in a menu right away to be able to get the big full flavor of what a tomato tastes like when it's grown locally. And you get a big flavor. There's a huge difference between a tomato in December versus the time of year right now, because they're not being packed and shipped across the country to be able to get to somewhere they're not growing. But if you can get them really close to the source and you can get them from a local farm, you're going to get a lot more flavor out of something like that. So that is typically how I'm going to decide what dishes to include on a menu. Now, positioning them on the menu is a whole different, ball game. You can, most people will start out with like an appetizer or soups or something like that, kind of at the top, and then do your entrees. You could do sandwiches as a separate thing. You could also, if it's Italian, you could do a pasta versus a pizza recipe or menus, to be able to have them split up on those as well too. But there are quite a few resources out there to be able to do it. I can't think of one online off the top of my head right now, but um, when it comes to creating a menu, think about seasonality. Things are going to be able to deliver big flavor and to be able to have people come back to your restaurant to crave something. A lot of restaurants will have staple items on them, so something that they might have on the menu all the time, doesn't matter what time of the year is. So if there's a certain dish like that, you can always create things around that. And then also think about things that you can use in multiple menu items, right? So like if tomatoes are being used in something like a bruschetta, like where you have a crusted bread with tomato and different herbs or something on it, you probably want to use tomatoes in a different entree as well, too, besides just the appetizer. That way, you're using the same ingredient in multiple dishes, so you don't have 110 different ingredients, that you have to be able to keep track of and keep fresh. That way, you can kind of narrow down how many ingredients you have to be able to use in multiple recipes. Definitely helps with budget on that end as well, too. But those are a couple tips to be able to get you started on crafting your menu. Just think seasonality is probably the best way to be able to create the menu, and it helps keep things changed up a little bit and gets people, excited about what's going to be on the menu next. Melissa, um, oh, great. Thank you, Dan, for your answer on my menu. It gives me a lot to think about. There's so much detail to consider. Yes, exactly. And, part of that too is to be able to, again, give yourself leniency on it. If you have customers that are coming through, ask them what they think of it, what they'd like to see on it as well, too. Melissa, what are a couple favorite dishes to take on a picnic or road tripping? So that's fun. Kind of depends on what we're doing. Usually, if we're doing a road trip or something like that, or a picnic, we don't have things refrigerated. We might have something like in a cooler, but so I usually try to think of things that aren't going to get weird or funky, basically not being refrigerated. One of my kids' favorite things that I pack on their lunch all the time is chickpea tacos. Basically, it's chickpea salad tacos, which is very much like the one that we put in our plant-based courses. It's like a tuna salad recipe, but it's basically chickpeas mashed up with pickles and either a mayonnaise or a cashew cream. And for the adult version, there's lots of other things like garlic powder and onion powder and kelp granule. I just keep it simple with the other three ingredients for them, and that's an easy thing to be able to pack for a picnic too. Just to be able to get a nice, either sandwich or a wrap out of something like that too. But wraps are kind of my go-to for those kinds of things for packing a picnic or something like that, or a road trip because they're easy to eat while you're driving on the road, or easy to handle, and you can put all kinds of different things in wraps. So a lot of times we'll bake off some tofu and then just put in some different things like arugula or different spinach or different greens like that. Maybe some different herbs, if I have some basil or dill to be able to put into it to give a little pop of flavor. And then some tomatoes, but maybe not a lot because they drip a lot and you don't want to be dripping all over if you're on the road trip, or the picnic at the same time too. So those are some easy ones. Some different salads are always great to be able to have it, especially if you're doing a picnic, where you can kind of spread things out a little bit and actually use, utensils and, actually use bowls and stuff like that, which is great as well too. We also love to do dehydrated chips, so we'll do kale chips with different like cashew seasonings and stuff like that onto them. Um, or we might do like a roasted red pepper and flax meal kind of ground up and then dehydrate those. And you can make chips out of them too. So those are probably some of the kind of go-to easy ones that we would use for either picnic or road tripping. I see you have a follow-up question here. What are a few of the items you like to serve for dessert in the summer? In the summertime, it's typically always going to be fruit for us, because the fruits are just so fantastic and prolific in the summertime. So, getting blueberries and strawberries and, the raspberries right off the plants is fantastic for us in the summertime. My daughter loves watermelon. My youngest does. And having watermelon really cold in the fridge all the time is great. A lot of times in the summer too, we will keep the majority of our fruit in the refrigerator, to be able to make it so it's a nice cool snack too. So we'll keep, like our grapes. Sometimes we even put them in the freezer so they're cold. But apples and oranges we'll also keep in the fridge too to be able to make things cold as well. Another treat that my girls love is banana nice stream. So basically, just taking frozen bananas and putting them into a food processor, and it turns it into ice cream like texture, which is fantastic. And they love that any time of the year, really. But that's a great thing to do with your bananas once they're turning brown. Is put them in the freezer. Make sure you peel them first, and then you can put them in the food processor for a banana ice cream treat. And you can put other things like strawberries in to be able to blend it up, or even like chocolate chips if you want to be able to kind of use like sprinkles or something like that if you'd like to for kids. But I hope that helps, Melissa. Kathy, making gluten-free bread using the various non-wheat flours and using asylum husk powder as a binder. The bread is good, but it is a purple hue is unappealing. How can I get rid of the purple color? I'm pretty sure that's coming from this Facilium husk. I can never say that word right. But I'm not 100% sure. It probably has to do with one of the flowers you're using in that. And I'm not sure how to get rid of the purple color, not knowing exactly what that's coming from. Besides switching out the ingredients and trying maybe a different binder or a different flower that would come from that. So sorry, I can't answer directly on that because I'm not 100% sure where the purple's coming from. Michael B., how repeatable does a dish need to be present? How repeatable does a dish need to both present and taste to be good, a, a go-to for a customer? Well, that really kind of depends on the customer, right? So, if they have a favorite, most people's favorite foods kind of go back to memories, especially from when they're kids. So that probably has a lot to do with that, like to be the repeatable flavor for them. Um, I'm trying to look at this. How repeatable does a dish need to both present and taste to be? I mean, you definitely want to be presenting the dish really nice. Try to do it to the best of your ability, even if it's just spaghetti on a plate. Try maybe twisting it in a ladle to be able to get like a nice curve on it all to be able to plate it well. But flavor wise, it should be really, flavor packed. You want it to be as much flavor as you possibly can in there. Good rule is always you always want them to be able to come back for more, right? So I usually don't I try not to do big servings anymore. I definitely have my grandma in me a bit where I overserve a bit too much, but um, putting just enough on the plate with a lot of big flavor, is a great way to be able to have somebody enjoy the bite, but not be oversaturated by the flavor or too full. So by the end, they're like, "Wow, that was amazing," and they're already thinking about, "Wow, I can't wait till I get that again." So hope that helps a little bit, Michael. Diane, do you have any ideas for turmeric root? Yeah. What's the equivalent of turmeric root versus turmeric powder? I love using turmeric root, and I use it in all kinds of things. One of my wife's favorite soups is a cow soy, and it is very turmeric heavy. So it's basically turmeric and lemongrass and shallots, and you saute that all up, and then it's like a coconut milk base. So that with some noodles and other things like mushrooms and tofu in it, basically, it's a wonderful soup, and we use fresh turmeric for that all the time. We use turmeric, powder in our, tofu scrambles in the morning as well. Just gives it a nice color, but also good flavor. And turmeric in curries pretty much all the time. I can't really think of too much that I don't put turmeric in when I'm cooking Indian style foods. Um, but the difference between turmeric root and turmeric powder is just that the powder is basically dried turmeric, and then it's ground up into a fine powder. Where a turmeric root, you'll see it kind of looks like a weird earthworm, like a really fat earthworm. And then you want to peel the outside of it to be able to get kind of the woodiness around the outside, and then you can grate it like in a ginger grater or something like that as well too. But you definitely want to grind it up or not grate it to be able to utilize that as well. It's great in teas too. It's good for anti-inflammatory uses, but I use turmeric constantly in both of its forms, in the root and the powder. The powder is definitely easier because it lasts longer, but I probably have 6 turmeric roots in my fridge right now, waiting to be used for something. Michael, what details would you add to a menu item for a plant forward experience? So what details would you add to a menu item for a plant forward experience? So, one of the things that I love for menu planning, if I'm going to a restaurant and I'm looking for a plant based meal, I'm always looking for a signifier telling me that something on the menu is plant based. So most places will do a little green leaf or something like that, or a green dot, or they'll put a V or VG next to it. It's great to distinguish between vegetarian and vegan as well, because some people might, eat dairy, but they might not. Others might not. So, having the distinguishing factor between those two is fantastic. So, looking for options for everyone, making sure that there's more than just one option, and not just a salad, so looking for a couple entrees that might be plant forward, and a couple on appetizers that might be plant forward as well, depending on how big your menu is. If you have 100 items on your menu, you should definitely have a good amount of plant based. But if you only have like 8 entrees, you might want to make one or probably two of those plant based, at some point, to be able to, or make them so you can do either or. A lot of restaurants will do that too. So they'll have the regular version, but they'll also put a thing on it that says can be made plant based or something on that as well. Um, so those are probably the best, items to be able to put on a menu for a plant forward experience. Diane, can you share any ideas for adding edamame in entrees and soups? So yeah, edamame is a great thing just to be able to kind of sprinkle onto foods basically. So I'll put them on top of salads. I'll put them on top of ramen. I'll mix them into stir fries. I definitely use those all the time to be able to just kind of add to the top of things. Lately, my kids have been really into roasted edamame too, where you'll basically dehydrate the edamame and then coat them in like a plant-based milk or something like that, and then put different seasonings on them, and then dehydrate them again. So it basically kind of pulls all the flavors into it as well. And they just pop those like really fast. It's amazing how fast I go through them. But definitely, a lot of different uses to be able to do that. Even in Chad used to have this edamame dumpling where it's basically like a truffle oil and edamame that he would blend up with a couple other seasonings and make dumplings out of them too. And those were fantastic. You can serve those in a really light broth as well too for soup, which is fantastic. So a lot of different uses for edamame in foods. Another one from Diane. Do you have a vegan mayo recipe? Um, I don't. I've made it in the past, but I can't remember everything that was in it, to tell you the truth. But I'm sure if you Googled vegan mayo recipe, you'd probably find a couple of them. The one thing I do know is they're very oil heavy. So if you're whole food plant based with no oil, that might be a little bit of a hurdle for you to be able to try to get over that. Most of the time when I'm trying to do, like, I don't eat much mayo myself, even vegan mayo, even though that's, we buy vegan mayo, like even Hellman's, I think, has a version of it. But I also love it because it doesn't spoil like a regular mayo. Like if you had, like if I was making those chickpea tacos for my kids, I know I'm sitting into my lunch, having mayo based is fine with them because they're not going to spoil as easy. But yeah, so I would probably recommend doing a Google based on that to see what you can find on them. Or I was going to say I don't really eat too much, mayo, but I'll use avocado instead, just to be able to get that nice kind of the texture and the nice fat to it as well too. Kathy, according to my research, the purple is from this psyllium husk. Could I soak the powder in lemon and try to bleach it? And if so, how do I adjust the liquid in the recipe? I'm not 100% sure how to tell you that, Kathy. I've never used that before, and I've never tried to bleach it in there as well. So I'm sorry I'm not too much help on that. Um, maybe Patrick, who's our moderator here, could you maybe tag that and send it to Fran, who's our expert baker, who might be able to help Kathy with that one, and then we'll get you an answer on that. All right, Kathy. Sorry, I'm not the expert on that, but Fran will probably be able to help you with it. All right, Robert. One of my favorite dishes is to substitute a meat steak with a veggie steak like cauliflower. Any other suggestions to try veggie plant-based steaks? Any seasonings or sauces for those suggestions? Yeah, I do mushroom-based steak pretty often actually. And with this one, what I'll do is I'll take a um, a lion's mane mushroom typically, and I'll put it in a pan. Derek Sarno, Chad's brother, kind of helped develop this technique. But you'll basically take two cast iron pans, put your lion's mane into one of them, saute it down, and then basically flatten it down with another pan. And you get a brown edge on either side. The seasonings I usually put onto it are a little bit of paprika, a little bit of garlic powder, onion granules, um, yeah, salt as well too. And then I'll take that and I'll marinate it in something like a tamari, with maybe a little beet juice in it as well, and maybe just a touch of vinegar or something, maybe a lemon or something like that. Marinate it for a couple hours, and then basically put it back and saute it again, and you get a nice like sliceable mushroom that has a steak-like consistency. That's probably one of my go-tos for a steak, a plant-based steak that really big, full of umami, and people love that dish. All right, Michael, is there another? If there's an ingredient or dish you personally dislike, how do you approach preparing it well for your customers? Um, that's interesting because it's at that point you're kind of on technique based, so I'm a huge proponent of trying to taste everything that you are putting out to be able to make, and you should probably do the same thing on the dish that you don't like as well too. But that's kind of you're really kind of relying on muscle memory and your technique at that point to be able to get to the point where you can make a dish, and you don't have to taste it. Takes time and effort to be able to get to that point. But you should at least, even if you don't like it, you should know what it's supposed to taste like, right? So having other people taste that dish for you, to be able to see what the flavors are, and have a bunch of different people taste it to be able to tell you. Having a chef taste it is always a great idea too, to be able to say like, okay, what would you do to this? What's missing? I do that with my wife, and my wife does that with me all the time, where it's like, well, she'll give me something and it's like a sauce and say, what does this need? And I'll be like, oh, here's that one little thing. And she's like, that's exactly what it was missing. So sometimes it's good just to go to an outside perspective to be able to see what it is. And once you get the recipe down, the base recipe down, then it's just kind of rinse and repeat and doing it all over again. Hope that helps. Well, we had a quick session today. Thank you for joining us for the Ask Me Anything hours from Ruby. Have a great day and happy cooking.